Hey guys, today we're going to be doing a totally different type of video. I'm going to take you through the process of how I look for land and when I'm prospecting for land, and what are the things that I'm looking for and what I can tell by just using Google Earth. So we're going to go and look at a piece of land using Google Earth, and we're going to look at certain criteria like what's the aspect, where might the water be flowing and accumulating, see if we can tell anything about the soil, what about the prevailing winds. We're just going to use this basic, freely available technology, and this will be useful for anybody who's looking for land, because if you can do as much of the research before you actually go on the site so that maybe you know what to expect, or maybe you can figure out that it's not the type of piece of land you'd be looking for, you can save yourself a lot of time. And so I've done this a lot. Last fall, if you guys are following my vlogs, I started actually looking for land to scale up Green City Acres, and this farm I'm going to show you today on Google Earth, I can't disclose the address, but we can look at it, is the farm that we were actually going to buy. So I hope I can't get in trouble for this. I don't disclose the address, and I don't tell you who it belongs to. You know, it's free information on Google Earth. So anyways, we're going to check it out, and this video is going to be part of a 3-part series. So today we're going to look at a agricultural rural piece of land and look at things that we can learn about it. Then in the next video, we're going to look at an urban piece of land and more or less do the same thing. And then in the third video, I'm actually going to show you the plans that I had for that rural farm. I drew up plans on how I was going to lay this farm out. So that one will be like, if I was going to scale up Green City Acres, how would I do it? Where would I put the greenhouses? How would I lay the farm out? So we're going to do that in the third video. So before we jump into this one, I just want to say there's still a few tickets available for the event I'm doing with Jean-Martin Fortier at Les Fermes des Quatre Temps in Hemingford, Quebec. That's the June 18th through 22nd. Still some tickets available for that. And then I'm also doing an event in Ottawa on Sunday, June 24th. I don't get to Ontario very often, and so this opportunity came up. I'm going to be signing some books and then doing like a one-day workshop on Sunday. So the link for that will be just take you to my website, to my events part of my website, and then you can find those events and buy tickets for them from there. All right, guys, let's get into it. We're going to zoom in here to Kelowna, my hometown, where I live, and I'm going to show you the property that I was looking at. And what we're going to do here is kind of like I'm going to explain to you what you can look for just by using the map. And we're going to look at a property like this, and then we'll find a sort of a random urban property and check that one out too. So let's just start here. So this is the property we are actually going to buy, and I hope I can't get in trouble by showing you this. I'm not going to reveal the address or anything, but somebody else bought it. So we made an offer on this property. We were going to buy it. It was the deal was like $1.5 million. It's 11 acres. It's a lot of money, right? Like, it's insane. It's the peak of the market. That's part of the reason why we decided not to do that. I did that video about staying small and debt free, so it kind of changed my goals. And in the part 2 of this video, I'm going to show you guys the farm plan I actually made for this farm. I drew up a pretty detailed map, where the greenhouses go, where the beds were going to go, how the field blocks were going to be set up, and everything. So that's going to be in another video coming out after this one. That'll be Friday, and I'll kind of explain to you, like, if I was going to farm big, how I was going to do it. So this property is 11 acres total. So what we're looking at here is this house is part of the property. So the property line goes right up this hill, along here, along this road, all around here and down here. And it was a cool property. I mean, like, I don't have any regrets, but I was dreaming, like, I was stoked because this property had essentially 4 rental properties on it. So there's a trailer here, like a mobile home trailer, where there was two bedrooms, so like farm helpers could stay in there, and then there was these 2 detached garages that had like a suite above here. It's crazy. The guy collected cars. Detached garage here, and then on the underside of it here, another detached garage, and then a detached garage there. So 2 detached places with like 3 garages essentially. We were going to make rental suites here on the ground level of the house, and then
the mobile home. Anyways, that's a whole other conversation. I want to talk about the land itself and what I learned about this land just by looking at the map. And we went and viewed this property, I think 3 times. I had contractors there with me to help us because like we were going to do a lot of renos on it. But let's just look at the property itself, and let's go from there. So first things first, the property is slightly orientated to the, running this way, the property is orientated to the northwest and southeast. So that's not necessarily a big deal. That's okay. I mean, in a perfect world, we'd always have everything orientated to the north and south, so it makes putting greenhouses in there easily. But that's okay. It's not. So whatever. So let's just like at first shot, what can we tell around the property? So we can tell a number of things. First thing is we're mostly surrounded by agriculture. So this is actually in the what's called the Agricultural Land Reserve in British Columbia. And that has pros and cons, but it means that we can do agriculture, and there's certain things that you get tax benefits if you are farming the land, stuff like that. So we know that. One thing, like if you want to find out the zoning of land, you can just go on it's usually the city or municipality or district you live in, and you can go to that website and search the address, and it'll tell you like what zoning it has and what are the permissible things that you can do on that property. Does it have water rights? Does it have a well and stuff like that? You can find out a lot of that stuff on that website. You won't be able to find that out on Google Earth, but just from Google Earth alone, we can tell a lot. So for one, we can see the aspect, which way we're orientated. We can see what we're surrounded by. We're surrounded by, looks like cherry orchards. We got some vineyard action over here. Kelowna is a very agricultural area, especially with stone fruits. Cherries are the biggest one, but then we do apples, and there's like plums, apricots, pears, and then of course vineyards, lots of vineyards. And so one thing that you can tell right off the bat that could be a concern if you wanted to make your farm organic is, are you surrounded by conventional farms? And in all likelihood, you are. So I'm not an expert on the requirements to be certified organic, but I do know that you have to have a buffer between your farm and the neighboring farm. And I can tell right here that there's a good amount of buffer. And so that's actually a good thing. So we can see this farm up here. And then we've got this sort of riparian area that has lots of trees in it. So that would definitely qualify and be good for a buffer. The immediate neighbor's farm isn't farming at all. It's like a junkyard. And then there's a farm one place over, so that would actually qualify as a buffer. And then the other farm up here that's actually above the property. And so you can see the house is actually above the farm. It's on the higher part of the farm. And that would qualify as a buffer for the farm too. But one thing that was a drag for us, that was a major consideration when we were looking at this property, is that the house is so close to this that if these guys are spraying their whatever they spray on their cherries, would that just be blowing into our house? And so that was kind of a concern for us there. So we're good for buffer there. Now let's talk about aspect. Okay, so I mentioned right when we started looking at this that we're sort of orientated to the northwest and southeast. So that's not necessarily a bad thing, but let's zoom in and see what we can further look at. What's great about Google Earth is if you right click, with Mac I just hold shift, but I think with PC it's right click, you can scroll around. So we can look at slope. So this is where your map now becomes three-dimensional. We can look at slope. So look at this. We can look into this bowl. It's sort of a bowl, right? So now there's this barn in the center of the property here. And you can actually see that it's at the lowest point of the property. Now, that might be a concern and it might not be. It might be a concern if we were close to a river, but we're not that close to a river. There might be a river or natural occurring water running through this riparian area here, but it's not directly connected to this property. So if there was high rains or a really wet season, we might have to worry about this being flooded, but it probably hasn't been flooded, because why would they build a barn somewhere, and it's been there for a long time, Why would they build a barn in a place that could be flooded? So that's not so much the issue here specifically, but it could be because it is at a low point, and we can see that clearly, right? We can see that is in a bowl. So it could be an issue on another piece of property. Let's just say this wasn't a bowl. We're close to a river. That would be a major concern for us. Now, we notice that so let's just talk more about aspect. So we're sloped, right? So we got a slight slope on this property, and we can see here, let's just turn this to the south. So we're looking straight south. If you look at the compass in the top right corner, you can see where our south is. So we've got a slight slope coming towards us down to the barn, slightly to the north. Actually, toward the northwest. It's not necessarily a bad thing because it's not that radical of a slope. And if you just come here further, you can kind of get a better idea of what that slope looks like. It's not that bad. For growing vegetables, it's not that big of a deal. Now, I certainly wouldn't put my greenhouses down on the slopes in that direction. I would put my greenhouses up here at the high point, and I'll show you that in the next video part of the series. We'll kind of look at my maps. But so we've got a bit of an aspect there. So that means, like, let's say we wanted to grow our hot weather crops, we wouldn't put them in this zone here because on the shoulder season, this part will get a lot of shade, especially in the morning. In fact, we probably wouldn't put any of our early crops along this tree line. We would keep all of our early crops in the season as far back as possible, and they would probably start in the greenhouses, like as most farms would, right? And then we would work our way out into the field this way because that way we're maximizing our light. But now, in the summertime, there's no problem. We can have, I might have pruned these trees back a bit, but we could have had bed blocks right up to here. And in the summertime, they'll get full sun because for us in this climate, our sun, like even now, we're still a ways off from the summer solstice. We're still 20 days from the solstice, or so. Our sun is coming up in the northeast and setting in the northwest. We get really long days, and at the summer solstice, it's like 18 and a half hours of daylight. So that carries on pretty well for the summer. So along a tree line here wouldn't be that big of a deal. Other things that we might consider as far as the aspect is prevailing winds. Now, in Kelowna, our prevailing winds for the most part come from the direction of our lake, which is, if I just zoom out here, is over here which is going to be west from us. So from our farm plot, it's going to be west. So our prevailing winds are typically going to be coming from the west. And the cool thing about this particular property is as far as those winds go, we're not that exposed because we've got these hills over here with trees, and then we got these tree breaks here. So we're actually pretty sheltered from the wind, which is a really good thing because in the springtime we get these brutal winds. Now, sometimes there's winds from different directions. Sometimes we get in the winter or on the colder side of the season, we get winds coming from the north. And sometimes in the summer, we get hot winds coming from the south, but it's really more the southwest because it's coming from the ocean. So the nice thing about that is we've got lots of tree cover from all the places where the majority of winds are going to come from, and then we've got this hillside with other tree cover. So as far as that, we're really good. Now, we've talked about, we can talk a little bit about where water might drain and where it might flow. So in this situation, I often wonder why they put this barn at that low point. But when I looked at the site, I didn't see any signs that there was water collecting in that area. So it must drain somewhere. And where they drained it specifically, I'm not so sure. They could have ran some kind of drainage field along this depression here, which is the lowest point when these two hill parts come together. So maybe they had some kind of drainage ditch dug in there with gravel or something like that. But that's where, if you had a really wet climate, that's where they would go. It'll all accumulate down there. Now let's talk about soil. What can we learn about soil from just looking at a map like this? Now, one thing that's cool about this is you can really see a lot just from the images. Now, just look at that map and tell me, where's the greenest parts? Up here Down here, that's about it. The rest is pretty dry. So, the rest of the field here is fairly green. But what's really interesting is if we look up here, so you see where there's this sort of ridge, they've done something there. It looks like they've built that up. Like, that doesn't really look natural to me. It's been leveled out in some way or another. And you can tell that this soil is rocky just by looking at the map. You can see these patches where it's kind of exposed and it's not really that green. Chances are that soil is going to be kind of rocky. And I can actually, I knew that before I went in because I've done this thing so many dozens of times. But when I actually went to this site and I stuck my shovel in the ground, sure as I guessed, ting, 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 I was finding a lot of rocks and gravel. So this soil up here was like subpar at best. And then you can see down here, this is your premium soil in here. This stuff's okay. This stuff's pretty chewed away. You definitely have to do a lot of amending in these areas, and particularly up here. And that's where we were going to put our greenhouses, and we'll look at that in the next video. But you can tell a lot from soil just by looking at that. You're looking at ridges. If you look at other pieces of land too, like let's just look at the neighbor's place for a second here. You're looking up at these higher places, you can see, and if they're really dry, they're generally pretty rocky. Where you see these sort of green accumulations, that's where moisture is accumulating, and then that's where the better soil is going to be. So, same as here. Look at this neighbor's property here. Pretty bone dry, probably pretty rocky, not a lot of soil in there because there's no green. And so they're obviously not irrigating it because they're not doing anything with that piece of property. And that's not necessarily something that's going to turn you away. It's just going to tell you more information about what you might need to do and what you can expect when you go to look at it. So the other thing is that you can look at from maps is your neighbors. What's going on with the neighbors? We talked about the agriculture that's going on. And maybe when we're going to go and look at an urban plot here next, we could talk about neighbors. But right now, we can just tell this neighbor, that's the only real neighbor that we have here, because everything else, like these guys are up high, these guys are up high, these guys here, they're blocked by trees. So the only neighbor we're ever going to see on this property is right here. And so we want to be concerned with what they're up to and what they might be concerned about what we're up to. And one thing right off the bat I can tell is this person doesn't really give a crap about what's going on. It's more or less a junkyard. So that can be good and bad. It's good in the sense that they probably won't be getting their nose in your business. It's bad in that their property is kind of an eyesore, right? But hey, whatever. That's a personal discrepancy on whether you care about that or not.
Hey, thanks for watching, guys. If you found that helpful, please hit the like button, subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and hit that little notifications button next to the subscribe button because it will send you a notification when I publish a new video. If you want to get more stuff from me, I'm writing blogs every week on medium.com, and if you sign up for my newsletter, the link is below as well. I'll send you an email every Friday morning. I'm not going to spam you. I'm just sending you a link to my article, a link to my say one of my most popular videos of the week, and just some general stuff that I'm thinking about or that I'm interested in. That link will be below. All right, guys, talk to you later.